So good afternoon, everyone. We are here to announce the very good news that our children will be returning to in-person learning this week. These past 11 months have been a whirlwind for our entire city, pushing us to limits, not once, not twice, but countless times. We've lost jobs, and we've lost loved ones. We'd grappled with losing the certainty and predictability of our lives and been left instead with instability, uncertainty, and we have all been on a nonstop emotional roller coaster that we have individually and collectively tried to navigate a set of circumstances that none of us experienced before. But I have seen up close and personal that you and we are a strong and resilient people. Our strength and resiliency echoes down through the generations and is a core part of who we are as a city and what sets us apart from any other place on the planet. I know that because I see it every day in the faces of individuals and families and communities. It's a spirit and mettle that has brought us this far, to where we can now see light at the end of this long, dark tunnel that we have been in since COVID-19 first came to our shores 11 months ago. And that light grows bigger and brighter every day. That is why I'm tremendously pleased to announce that at long last, CPS has finally reached a tentative agreement with the Chicago Teachers Union that opens up the school doors for safe in-person learning for our pre-K, cluster, and K through 8 students. This agreement was about making sure everyone in our school communities just aren't safe, but also that they feel safe and feel that they have their lived experience and fears and frustrations have been heard. And pending the ratification of this tentative agreement by the CTU House of Delegates, this important milestone marks a moment for each of us to reflect and to heal. We need to do this for our city, for our communities, for our families, and most importantly, for our children. I want to first specifically speak to students and parents. As a parent myself of a 12-year-old, I know that the last year has been especially hard on you. We were compelled to close schools last spring on short notice and had to hurriedly stand up a remote learning infrastructure that left too many of you trying to navigate without all the supports that we would have liked. And we learned a lot from that experience, and CPS worked diligently over the summer to provide more devices, better connectivity through Chicago Connected, and other supports for students and families. But we still all know there is no replacement for the kinds of supports and security and certainty that in-person learning provides. I have watched remote learning classes, and I know how hard it has been for so many of you. At times I have walked away having borne witness with a broken heart, because I know that we must do better for you. It is these experiences and my own as a parent that have made me more determined to make sure that every parent has the opportunity to make a learning plan for their child that is best for them. That is what this struggle has been all about. I also know that this very public dispute over these last few weeks has absolutely been the hardest on you, our parents and our students. You have told me directly, and you have told us that you feel like as parents and students, you have been held hostage and that your voices have been drowned out. I want you to know that I and we have heard you. We will continue to do everything possible to uplift and empower you to uplift your voices and make sure that you are heard by creating spaces for you at the table. So let me express my gratitude to our parents and our students for their fearlessness and for drawing what at times feels like superhuman patience to navigate everything that's been thrown at you over this last year. This entire school year has been incredibly hard on you and your families, and I understand that. And you've been the force that's really propelled us forward and held us together. And I want you to know that I understand that. I will never lose sight of that, and I will continue to fight and advocate for you. To our CPS teachers and staff, I want you to thank you for your hard work and commitment throughout these extraordinary 11 months. And I've said this before, and I want to say it again. I want to personally thank those cafeteria workers and the janitors and the building engineers and the assistant principals and the principals who have never left our buildings, not one day. And all the sacrifices you have made to make sure that our buildings are clean and ready and that our children are fed. But I also want to thank the teachers. I know many of you have worked harder this year than you've ever worked before because that's what the circumstances demanded for you to manifest your love and commitment to your students. Reworking your whole lesson plans and learning how to deal with the wild world of Google Meets, sometimes on small devices, sometimes under really difficult circumstances. You have been champions, all while fighting through this roller coaster of your own personal emotions and dealing with your personal health and your family. I understand that, and I want to thank you on behalf of a grateful city for all the teachers out there, for everything that you've done to stand strong, stand tall in this very difficult moment. You have been there for our kids, and we will continue to be there for you. I'd also like to acknowledge President Jesse Sharkey of the Chicago Teachers Union and other members of the CTU leadership team who were instrumental in making this temporary tentative agreement possible. I want to personally thank President Sharkey for a series of very candid and productive discussions that no doubt help explain and narrow the issues on both sides. I very much appreciate his hard work. To the members of CTU and others in our Chicago labor movement, for me, calling Chicago a union town is more than just a tagline. Organized labor built this town and has been a force for good for working families for centuries and remains so now, and rightfully so. Across the city and sister agencies, we have over 40 unions. We have very strong working relationships with almost everyone. And I am committed to always approaching these kinds of moments with an open mind, a listening ear, and a heart brimming with good faith. We will invariably not agree on every issue. But my request, my plea, is that we have to figure out a way to disagree in ways that does not cause permanent damage to all concerned, particularly when our children are involved. This most recent process with the CTU has been very hard and complicated, particularly because we've been wrestling with health and safety issues in the middle of a pandemic when emotions are fraught and the fear is real. I am confident that the measures that we have and will put in place will make our schools even safer than they already are and will be a model for other systems in Illinois and throughout the country. There are lots of people to thank, and I've already thanked some, but there's others that I need to call out by name. I want to start with the women who are here with me today. Dr. Janice Jackson, our fearless CEO of the Chicago Public Schools, and our Chief Education Officer, LaTanya McDade. Without them, this moment would not be possible. Pure and simple. They have sacrificed a lot, personally, professionally, and laid it on the line to make sure that our children were heard and have the opportunity for a safe return to in-person learning. I have to thank Dr. Allison Arwady, who really the entire city owes a debt of gratitude that we can never truly repay. And in this moment has been right there by our side, walked through this journey with CPS and continues to do so. Personally for me, providing me with real counsel, strength, and insight. So Dr. Arwady, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And thanks to the entire Chicago Department of Public Health team for being the shoulders that we, every single one of our residents, has been standing on through this incredible time. I also want to give thanks to our lawyers, and particularly to our lead lawyer, Sally Scott, from the Franzik Law Firm. I know what it's like to be a woman in law, to be at the front lines. And I just want to say, Sally, I appreciate you, thank you, and support you 100%. I also want to give thanks to the others who have been instrumental, particularly over these last 2 weeks. Some of them don't want to be named, so I won't. But I want you to know that I thank and appreciate everything that you've done to help move us to this point, to narrow the issues so that we could get to this point of a tentative agreement. And I also have to thank the others on the CPS negotiating team who exhibited cool-headed patience needed to guide this deal across the finish line. And specifically, I want to call out Arna Rivera and Matt Lyons and the others on their respective teams and internally at CPS that made this moment possible. As I said earlier, these past 11 months have been a whirlwind for our city, and that's putting it mildly. But with our school reopening, we have taken a momentous step forward in our journey of renewal and recovery. The schools are the spine for our city. Everything hangs on our public school system and our other school systems across the city. We can judge the health of who we are by what we do to support our children and what we do to support public education in the city and making it available to truly be the great equalizer that it is. We have to make sure that our journey sees us fighting that much harder to ensure that we provide for our kids the education, the resources, and love that they need, and let's emphasize love, that they need to learn, grow, and pursue their dreams. The things that we've talked about over these last couple of weeks, the challenges that we are seeing arising through this year, the achievement gap that unfortunately has grown wider. This hasn't disappeared because of this tentative agreement. We have much work to do. Our sleeves are still very much rolled up, and we will continue the fight to make sure that we mend the fences, that we bridge the divides, all in the spirit of making sure that our children, our most precious assets in every family, in every city, have what they need to be able to thrive and to feel like their city supports them and loves them, even in these most difficult times. We have a responsibility and an obligation to them that we are all committed to fulfill. There is nothing that will stand in the way of making sure that we embrace and continue on this most noble of missions. That's who we must be as a city that loves and supports our children. If we do that, we will be known throughout the world as a city that has gotten it right, that's recovered in the right way, and is moving forward. Let me end by saying this. When I ran for mayor, I never thought that I'd be making decisions about who truly can get life-saving vaccine and when, or any of the other myriad of decisions that I've had to make over the course of this last year. But I believe very strongly that as a leader, you must play the cards that you are dealt, no matter how tough the hand. None of us expected to be in this kind of fight for our lives on a daily basis. And unfortunately, the struggle we have just come through is playing out all across the country. This is what the failure of the Trump administration has wrought. This is the legacy that we are still suffering under. But it is one that we will overcome. I have great confidence of that. And great confidence, again, because I see it every day. I saw it yesterday when I was up in a neighborhood on the Northwest Side, seeing whole families come to get vaccinated, and the joy and relief that they felt because they had an opportunity for this life-saving vaccine. I see it every day in the streets around my neighborhood, but all over the city. The resiliency that we have, the toughness that we have as Chicagoans, nothing will stand in our way. So I'm hopeful that we can get through this next period together, and that more relief is coming our way soon from a team in the White House, in the federal government, that understands and respects the importance of cities like Chicago. But let me also say, we also need to be the adults here at home. We need to set the example that our children will see and value and model for themselves. My fellow Chicagoans, we need to move forward and we need to heal. And with that, I'll invite Dr. Jackson to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, and good morning. I want to start by, again, echoing the thanks that Mayor Lightfoot pointed out in her remarks, but I think it's only fitting that we start with the mayor herself, whose leadership throughout this process has been something that I've relied on. I know I speak for Chief McDade as well as the rest of the bargaining team and CPS leadership team. I want to thank the mayor for the role that she has played in helping us to be here today, and I truly believe we would not have reached a resolution if it weren't for her leadership, insight, and expertise. So thank you for that. It goes without saying, this has been a long 11 months for everybody. And I've said time and time again how important it is for me to see our students have an opportunity to return to the classroom. That sense of normalcy not only will help them become better educated, but also bring back so much that has been lost throughout this pandemic. Today, we reached a tentative agreement with Chicago's teachers union, and the victory, I believe, is for our families who need it the most. It will allow us to provide them the relief and certainty that they need, and I know as a parent in Chicago public school system, that's something that you can't really measure the impact of. This will be a gradual transition, and I want to talk a little bit about what that is going to look like. But before I get into this, I really want to reiterate to parents that we are ready to reopen. We originally introduced our plan back in August, and since then we have strengthened our policies, strengthened the plan, and added additional resources throughout the process. And although it's been a challenging process, to say the least, I do truly believe that getting our students back in school is worth it. So, pending the ratification of this tentative agreement by CTU's House of Delegates today or tomorrow, we will begin a phase-in process. It starts with our pre-K and cluster students returning on Thursday of this week. Our elementary school grades will be staggered in over the course of the next few weeks. Kindergarten through 5th grade staff will return on February 22nd, with kindergarten through 5th grade students returning a week later on March 1st. 6th through 8th grade staff will return on March 1st, with 6th through 8th grade students returning on March 8th. While face covering, social distancing will be with us for the foreseeable future, I am hopeful that this is the beginning of a new phase for Chicago Public Schools that brings us closer to where we were prior to the pandemic. Ahead of the fourth quarter, we will again offer families an opportunity to return to school. So you will be hearing more about that in the coming weeks. In addition to ensuring that all the proper mitigation strategies are put in place, 2,000 pre-K cluster and special education staff members that live in medically vulnerable households, will be offered vaccination starting this week. We will begin vaccinating 1,500 CPS employees per week through our own vaccination sites, which will open later this month and be exclusively for Chicago Public Schools employees. That's in addition to the city's Protect Chicago Plus program, which will prioritize vaccinations for staff who live and work in communities that have been hit hardest by COVID. To ensure that we are responsive to the public health environment, we will have established protocols for classroom pods in schools that may need to revert to online learning. We've also reached an agreement on what would constitute a need to pause in-person instruction for the entire district, and we will be prepared to do that. Should the criteria be met throughout this pandemic. We have safeguards in place to make sure that our schools are safe, that our communities are safe, and that we've been completely responsive to all of our stakeholders in order to ensure a safe return to in-person instruction. In these past few weeks, I, like the mayor, have heard from a lot of people on all sides of this debate. And I want to say that I'm thankful for all of the feedback and all of the questions and concerns that have been shared and expressed. They really did factor into the decision making across the table. And I know I speak for the mayor as well as our partners at CTU. I truly believe that every educator wants what's best for students, and we all want the same thing. And I'm glad we were able to reach a resolution. I am thankful that we've reached this resolution because it benefits the most important stakeholders in our school system, and that those are our students. So with that, I'm just happy that we have a resolution and that we're moving forward. And once again, we cannot lose sight of our mission as a school system, which is to provide a high quality education to all of our students. And this return to in-person instruction will help us live up to that mission. And with that, we'll take questions.
Heather, why don't you go first? All right. I'm Heather Sharon with WTTW. I will start with my question.
Tell us who it's for, since there's many of us up here.
Sure, this is for the mayor.
Okay.
Mayor, on Thursday you said that this was your final day. On Friday you gave your last best offer. Why go back to the table? Why negotiate? What changed?
Well, let me make sure that we got the timeline right. On Thursday night, we gave our last best final offer. And if you look at what was proposed and what we've now agreed to in the tentative agreement, that framework is pretty much the same. You know, there are always things around the margins, nuances that need to be captured. So that's what really happened, I would say, over the course of Friday and yesterday. And we got to a place where we had an oral agreement late last night, and then we got the written tentative agreement earlier this morning.
All right. From Hannah Leone from the Chicago Tribune. I think this question is probably best for Dr. Arwady. The framework sets a return to remote learning for 14 days if the 7-day average test positivity rate increases for 7 consecutive days. The rate for all 7 consecutive days is at least 15% higher than the prior week, and the current day's positivity rate is at least 10%. How did you reach those numbers? Why do those metrics keep students and staff safe?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just clarify also that as the Chicago Department of Public Health, there are decisions that we make for the whole city, and then we also will advise. So in this case, we have advised CPS and CTU related to these particular metrics. These are not metrics that apply for learning across all of our settings, but they were developed specifically for CPS. And the bottom line, of course, is that, first and foremost, we want to make sure that the schools are safe, and we have consistently seen that schools can be safe even when there are significant increases in community positivity. But in this particular example, it's really defining that if we are at a high rate of COVID and that it is a surge, that it is growing quickly, meaning that we're seeing those numbers go up 15% week after week, and we get over that 10% positivity. The feeling is that would be a setting where you would move to a pause and really say, okay, for the next 14 days incubation period, let's pause, let's see where we are, and then continue to assess. And then as we would be able to see either that positivity come back down, or importantly, that growth slow, because what we really look for as epidemiologists is starting to see the growth slow and the curve coming down. We would feel very confident that that would be a setting that would be appropriate for coming back. So again, these are specifically for CPS, and we were pleased to help advise on them. Very pleased, certainly, that we've been able to get to a place that will bring students back, but they don't apply broadly across the city because we have over and over again seen schools can be safe regardless of high positivity rates.
Stay right there. I'll follow up. There was new reporting this morning from the CDC that says the B117, more transmissible variant, is doubling every 10 days in the United States. What do you say to parents who read that story and think, I can't take that risk because we just don't know enough about that more transmissible variant? Should students be wearing 2 masks when they go to school? What would you say to parents who are concerned about that new variant?
Yeah, so certainly we're watching these variants closely. We're watching them closely in Chicago, across the country, and around the world. But where you have the mitigation practices in place, like they are in place already in our schools that have been open, like they will be in place in the CPS settings, there's no reason to think that those same protective measures would not work against this variant. People need to wear their masks. They need to do the social distancing. We need to do the cleaning. But at the end of the day, one of the reasons why we have been so careful to push vaccine to the settings that are most driving our outbreak here in Chicago is because those are the settings where we can see spread and more concern for variant. And so obviously we're very pleased to be vaccinating teachers, but we also have to make sure that we are pushing vaccine to the settings that keep our risk for the variant down. So the variant, just in that message for families, is not a reason to think that schools cannot be a safe setting. It's not a reason to not feel confident about the mitigation strategies that are in place. It is a reason to double down on the things that we know work, and to make sure everybody across the city continues to do their part as we hopefully get to the other side of COVID.
This is for Dr. Jackson.
Can I just add a couple of words to what Dr. already said? A couple things. Your question to me really kind of underscores why it's so critically important that everyone takes seriously the public health metrics and mitigation efforts that we've been talking about for 11 months. We've said this before, that we truly are all in this together. Whether or not our schools are able to stay open, whether or not we're able to fight against another surge, whether or not we're able to really fight against these variants that we're seeing, depends upon every single person, not just the students, not just the teachers, not just CPS parents, but every single resident of the city doing their part as a city, as an individual, as a community. Everything that happens has a ripple effect across our city. So that's why we've said it's really important. The vaccine is an important tool, no doubt. But so is social distancing. So are wearing a face covering. So are all the other things that we know work. All of them have to be combined in this toolkit, utilized together to make sure we're keeping the city safe. If we keep the city safe, we keep neighborhoods safe, we keep workplaces safe, and we keep school safe. And for the parents that are hearing this bit of information, we have worked our tails off, and we will continue to tell you as best we know it what the state of play is, where we are seeing spread, how it spreads, and what you can do, most importantly, to protect yourself. So stay with us. Stay with us. Stay with Dr. Arwady. Still doing her The Doctor Is In shows on Facebook. The metrics that we put out every single day that are updated on our website, they're there to help give individual residents tools to understand what is happening on a neighborhood by neighborhood, zip code by zip code basis. We've been working with trusted community partners throughout this pandemic. They also are providing information. So there's a lot of different sources. No matter your proficiency with the digital tools that are out there, we're speaking to you, we're showing you visually, and we want you to have the information you need to educate yourself. So
This
think
one's
you're-
for Dr. Jackson. The CTU says that the framework does not require any member to resume in-person learning before being fully vaccinated. Will that cause staffing issues?
That's not my understanding of
Okay.
what's in the agreement.
With the vaccine rollout, will that cause staffing issues since it will be they will be vaccinated on paid time? Is that accurate?
We will allow people to get vaccinated during the workday if we can do that logistically. What I will say, we did commit to providing vaccinations for people that requested accommodations because they live in a home with someone with pre-existing conditions where they aren't the caretakers, and so we are prioritizing getting them vaccinated before they return to work. But we think that with the schedule that we have and the plan that we've already had in place for the past few months now for reopening, that we will be able to accommodate the students and families that have signed up.
What if an employee declines to get the vaccine? They don't think it's safe, or they have other concerns with their own health concerns. Will there be any incentives given for people to get staff members to get vaccinated, or what happens if somebody absolutely refuses?
Well, our focus, we're not going to force people to take the vaccine, or mandate it, I should say. Right now, the goal is to allow for individuals who want to be vaccinated based on our equity-focused schedule to get the vaccine. And right now, the demand is high, so my focus is on the individuals who have been asking for the vaccine and getting that to them. Otherwise, people have to, again, avail themselves to the accommodations policy, the FMLA policy, and other things that we have in place if they don't want to get vaccinated and don't want to come to work.
Let's do two more from you then.
There has been a lot of reporting over the years about cleanliness issues at schools and ventilation, and that's certainly been an area of concern for teachers. What do you say to teachers who are worried that schools, the physical plant, it isn't safe? And what would you say to teachers if they feel like they're bringing those concerns to their supervisors and they aren't being heard or taken seriously?
Well, we think that those are serious concerns, and I think the district has done an amazing job being responsive, first to your first part of your question around cleanliness, but also responding to ventilation issues. We did put out a video last week that provided a little bit more insight into that, because I do think there is some misinformation out there about how the systems work. And then the last thing I would point them to would be the safety committees that we've agreed to in our tentative agreement. So, if people don't think they're getting proper redress through their building administrators, the safety committees are there for people to raise those issues and give us an opportunity to address them.
You said that parents who have not opted their students back into in-person learning will get an opportunity to do so for the fourth quarter.
For the fourth quarter, yeah.
Are there improvements going to be made to remote learning as part of this agreement? And what is the plan to get high schoolers back in person?
Well, I'll take the last part of your question. We agreed to, have that conversation with CTU regarding high schools returning to school. So I don't want to get ahead of that. I will say what I've been saying the whole time. I think our students need to be back in school. Every time we have a press conference and talk about K through 8, I get countless emails from high school students and parents saying, what about us? What about us? So we will be addressing that shortly. What was the first part of your question? I forgot.
If there's going to be improvements made to remote learning.
What I'll say about remote learning, I think our teachers and building administrators, as well as the Office of Teaching and Learning and CPS and all the other academic offices, have done a great job, and they've done the best job they can do. I don't want us to start pretending like remote learning is going to be the way that we educate students. It is a good thing to do to patch things together to get through this pandemic, but our focus is on getting students back in school. We did a lot of work to get devices to students, internet connectivity. We've put together strong curriculum, and so I feel that we've done that, but there are just things that simply cannot be done in a remote setting, and so the focus has to be on return to in-person instruction.
Okay.
Dr. Jackson, when you talked about high school, you said you'll hope to have something soon.
Mm-hmm.
So do you anticipate high school students will be in person at some point this year?
I want to see high school students back in school as soon as possible. What we committed to is working with the union to get there. And so, again, I don't want to start negotiating at the podium today. We just got a victory after a long fight. So I think we're going to work with them, but my stance remains the same. I think children should be in school.
Thank you. Mayor, CTU says no deal till they decide it's a deal. Are you speaking too soon?
No. We have a tentative agreement subject to ratification of their House of Delegates. We understand the House of Delegates has the right to say yes or say no, but in fairness to parents who have really weathered an incredible storm, particularly over the course of this week, and the ups and the downs, are we there, are we not there? Given that we have a written document back from them, we felt that this was an appropriate time for us to give parents a preview, with the caveat that it is subject to ratification by the House of Delegates.
You're back in school, and then sure enough, it's spring break at the end of March. No chance that they'd stay in school for that week.
I'm sorry?
Spring break, no chance of canceling.
I don't think so. Look, as you may recall, a few years back, spring break was kind of upended. People make plans. They should be able to count on the school calendar. This is a tough year, and we've got a lot of ground in some ways to make up, but there are no plans right now to cancel spring break.
So many suburbs that have not gone back to school are watching as well. Mm-hmm. What advice do you give to those to say, because they're watching Chicago and they're going to see whether it works here?
Well, I'd love to give anybody advice, particularly when I don't walk in their shoes, just as they don't walk in ours. But for any mayor, village president that's out there, school board president that wants some insights from us, we're happy to share them. Look, this is tough stuff, as I said before. This is not, wages, salary, benefits. This is really dealing with some challenging, raw emotions that we all have been feeling in the middle of a pandemic, and trying to make sure that we focus on our children and really give parents options. There are going to be parents who are going to say, under no circumstances do I feel comfortable sending my students back to school. And I get that, and we respect that. But I know that there are at least 70,000, I think the number's higher, who want to send their children back, wanted to actually have an option to be able to build a plan for themselves. This can't be, in this extraordinary time, a one-size-fits-all approach, which is precisely why we've talked about this being about options for parents with their children to craft a plan that makes sense for their individual family circumstances until we get past this pandemic in full, which I'm hopeful will be within months, not longer. We need to give parents options, and that's precisely what this tentative agreement does.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Yep. Thanks, guys.